So you're thinking about getting your first bike and you're gonna do the big brain move and get yourself a small bike like this MT-03. They're lightweight, easy to ride, and even easier to learn with. But let's be honest, you don't want to get clowned on for owning a 300 at your bike night, do you? So you start Googling around a little bit, you start looking some stuff online, and you find something like this, a CBR 500R, a real sport bike. It's fully fared, look how cool it is. But is it actually worth it to go up in displacement? Let's unpack today why the CBR 500 maybe might not be worth it.
So this here is our little MT-03. We've had it in shop for quite a while, and it's actually on its way out. This is its little swan song, its last video on the channel. And if you don't know, this bike has a 321cc parallel twin, making 41 horsepower and 22 foot-pounds of torque. It weighs in at 370 pounds and costs you $4,599 on the showroom floor. But the question is, does that bike have enough to really compete with our MT-03 here?
Yeah, well, let's think about it. So the CBR 500 over here costs $6,999 for starters. So that is quite the hefty premium over a 300 class bike. It does, however, feature a 473cc parallel twin, making 47 horsepower and 31 foot-pounds of torque. So a lot more torque from this engine. This bike also weighs 423 pounds wet and ready to ride, so quite a porker compared to the regular 300 class. But the real question is, why do we have 500s and 300s and what's going on there? So Spite, I say we go to the whiteboard and figure this out.
Let's do it.
All right, guys, so to better understand what's going on today, I think it's important to walk through the history of 250 and 500cc motorcycles. So back in the late 80s, Kawasaki came out with the Ninja 250 and the Ninja 500. The 250 was seen as the entry-level, small displacement sport bike that you could get and really learn how to ride with. The 500 is more of a usable, everyday kind of motorcycle, and these went on for a very long time. The Ninja 250 and 500s pretty much went unabated and almost unchanged for over 20 years. The only major update we started seeing was in 2013 with the Ninja 300. Kawasaki came out and bumped up their displacement because Honda came out with a 300 as well at that time. Then in 2015, we saw the R3 and the Duke 390 come out in the North American markets, and in 2018, we had the Ninja 400. Now, people are trying to figure out what's going to happen with this market in the next 10 years, and some people think the Duke 490 is going to come out, maybe a Yamaha R4, and it seems like we're converging upon this sort of mid-400 class motorcycle. But if you look in the past, we've had 500s for a long, long time. So we had the Ninja 500 in 1987, the GS 500 is out there in 1989, the CB 500 came out for Europe but not North America. It was discontinued in 2003, and then in 2009 the Ninja 500 was discontinued, and then in 2008 the GS 500 was discontinued as well. In 2013, however, Honda came back out with the 500 class with the CBR 500R, the CB 500F, and the CB 500X. Now, the reason I think 500s died sometime in the mid-2000s was due to the easy access of credit and how good the economy was doing. People would go to dealerships and pick up, a 600 class bike, a 1000cc motorcycle with zero money down. There was not really a big incentive to purchase a more normal utilitarian 500 class bike when you could go out and flex on all your buddies with zero money down, as I mentioned before. However, going forward in the future, I don't really know what the 500 class looks like. It actually looks more close to the Duke 490 R4 Ninja 400 category. So now that we've gone over the history of these two styles of motorcycles, the 250 and the 500s, let's go see why nowadays 300s are so much closer to their 500cc counterparts. So the reason that the 500 and the 300 make such similar power figures is just math. This bike just doesn't rev out as high as this motorcycle, and when you keep revving a bike out, it's going to keep making power, right, Spike?
Yeah, exactly. So this is a smaller engine, so in order to get it to make more power, it has to rev out harder. It's why all those little 250 inline fours that everybody says they love scream to like 18,000 RPM. It's just the torque and horsepower are directly related. It's, again, like you said, math. So this has a higher RPM ceiling, about 12,000 RPM, to that bike's 9,000.
And the big thing we want to talk about here is, although these motorcycles make similar power figures, the torque figures are a little different and the weight's a little bit heavier on this one, the acceleration on these two bikes are actually very comparable. And if you don't believe me, let's go take a look. So as we saw in that little demonstration, you see that these bikes are pretty similar, and you can see that in other classes of motorcycle as well too, right, Spite?
Yeah, exactly. Big one comes to mind, 600 versus 650. You look at 600 class motorcycles, they're all race bikes that rev out really hard and they make like 120 horsepower. I think the R6 is 121, something crazy like that, versus the 650s, which are all about 75 horsepower, 50 foot-pounds of torque across the board. So you see there that the extra 50 cubes technically slows the bike down, right?
I guess so, but really you have to look at things like gearing, you gotta look at things like weights. I mean, there's so many considerations of what makes a bike faster or slower than another one, but displacement really is not the be-all, end-all. So if that's the case, why would we choose something like a 500 over a 300? Well, we think that sizing on these motorcycles is a big consideration. Let's show you some ergonomics checks on these two machines and show you why it would make sense to get a bigger bike like this.
So we all know my size. I'm 6'3", I'm 240 pounds, I got a 32-inch inseam, and both of these bikes actually have a 30.7-inch seat height, so they're the exact same. And if I mount up on this motorcycle, down this road before, I just don't fit on it. It is way too small for me. It's very clear that I'm not the intended rider. But if we move up to something like the CB500R here, you'll notice immediately as I sit on this bike how much more comfortable it is. There's a lot more room for me to be on the seat. There's a lot more room here for this butt pad. It's just a roomier motorcycle. And that's what makes these 500s a little bit more desirable for a bigger beginner. So if the only thing you're getting here is a bigger bike, does paying that extra premium really make sense? So let's talk about these bikes price for price.
So the elephant in the room for today is price, unfortunately. The MT-03 sits at the showroom floor at $45.99, while the CBR is $69.99. That's a $7,000 motorcycle. And when you consider the fact that you're probably not gonna keep these bikes for very long, maybe 8 months to 12 months, they sort of become a little, what's the word I'm looking for, Spike?
Transient.
Transient, like birds in the wind.
Teardrops in the rain.
Water on the stream.
Sand through your fingertips.
Okay, poetry aside, what are you getting for $2,400 more on the CBR 500 over here?
So for $2,400, you're not really getting that much. You are getting a little bit of adjustability with your preload in the front with these fake blue Öhlins fork caps here. You got preload adjustability in the back. You also have an adjustable lever here. You got a lot of carbon fiber, fake carbon fiber farkles from the inside of the cockpit here down to your chain guard. It's kind of just dabbed all over this motorcycle. I also do prefer the dash on this motorcycle. It's a taste thing, but the MT-03s leaves me a little bit wanting. This is a slightly nicer unit, but honestly, other than looks, which are pretty much a dead ringer for the CBR 1000 RR in this red and black colorway, you're not really getting that much.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the CBR 500 is a lot of flash and not a lot of substance. And for me, the guy who worries a lot about value for money, clearly because I own a Ducati, is that, you know, for $300 more, you get yourself a 650 class bike that's gonna pull way harder and rip way harder than this bike. Let's take a look. All right guys, so as you saw, that 650 pulls way harder than a 300 or a 500cc bike. And mentally, you think of a 500 and you think, oh, it's 200 more cubes than a 300, so a 650 is only 150 more, so it can't be that much faster, right? And Josh, you own an SV650, and you can speak to this a little bit.
Yeah, and they're not at all the same.
No.
So going from a 300 or 250cc up to a 500cc, the bikes really feel the same. Yes, there's more power, sometimes there's more size, but it's not at all the same difference as going from any of those bikes up to a 650cc class. That is a totally different class of motorcycle, and it's apparent immediately. Way more power. Usually they weigh a little bit more as well, but yeah, it doesn't feel at all like one of these small displacement bikes.
Yeah, so let's wrap this up today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive into a 300 versus a 500cc bike, and I hope you learned today that they're actually not that different. I think the main consideration you want to look at is how you fit on the 500s versus the 300s, because they can tend to be a little bit smaller. The main thing we want to look at today is price. These motorcycles are about $2,400 more than a similar class motorcycle, and we don't really think it makes a lot of sense from a value perspective, but if you like the look and you like the Honda and you fit on the Honda, then it's probably the bike you should get. So my sweet little squid, this video is actually over, but lucky for you, click on this one right here. You can keep watching your sweet Papa Yam, delivering you the motorcycle content you've come to know and love. Don't worry, I'll wait. I'll be here waiting for you. You're gonna click on that video.